It was Halloween night. My front door was decorated with all kinds of scary things: spiderwebs, skulls, candles, and more. You know, the common things that scare kids and make them run away. I was ready for a night of handing out candy to my neighborhood trick-or-treaters. I had a wolf mask in my hand when I opened the door to entertain the little kids. A horror movie was playing on the TV in my living room, and I loved it. Then, it happened. The bell rang and I paused the movie. The kids came early this year. I took off my wolf mask and walked to the front door. I grabbed a handful of candies from the large bowl on the table and opened the door in my fake wolf voice. But when I opened the door, there was no smiling face or cute outfit. It was a clown. It was a scary clown, though not the kind of fun you'd expect on Halloween. He wore a tattered and stained clown costume, and his face was painted in disturbing shades of black and white. I could see an evil glint in his eyes as he looked at me. My first thought was, what an odd guy. But before I could answer, he held out his gloved hand to give me the candy.
"Trick or treat,"
he muttered, his voice cracking with a scary smile. I had a hard time deciding whether to give candy to someone who wasn't in the mood for fun. Anyway, it was Halloween and I didn't want to be bad. So I dropped the candy in his hand and things went wrong. Every time he moved, the clown's smile grew. He tried to push through the doorframe and enter, his eyes shining with twisted determination. I panicked as I barely escaped his grip and slammed the door. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't just any Halloween game. This guy was after something else. I went out the door and looked for my phone to call the police. I could hear the adrenaline coursing through my veins and the clown on the other side pounding on the door, demanding to be let in. He didn't smile anymore. He was desperate. I waved and called 911 and told the operator what was going on. I could hardly believe what was happening, and waiting for the police officer was the longest time of my life. The clown outside was still knocking on the door, and his crazy laugh gave me chills. Finally, the sound of sirens in the distance grew louder, and I sighed in relief. The police arrived to save the day. I ran to the window and saw the flashing lights of the police car. The clown had to know he was in trouble, right? But when the police officer burst through the front door, they found nothing outside. The clown vanished into thin air without a trace. The entrance hall was empty, and there was no sign of grotesque or tattered clothing. The police questioned me, and their eyes filled with suspicion as I described the horrific encounter. Security footage showed the door being opened and that the clown was standing there. I felt crazy, but I knew what I was seeing, and it wasn't a Halloween game. It was something much darker. The police promised to monitor the situation in the neighborhood, but that was all they could do. I locked all the doors and windows, double-checked the security system, and tried to sleep, though my heart raced every time I heard a creak in the house. I still can't explain what happened on Halloween night. The mysterious evil clown that was a real-time nightmare has disappeared without a trace. The air changed into cold that Halloween night as I gripped my son's hand tightly, leading him in the direction of the old, creaky, haunted residence. It turned out to be an amusing, spooky adventure, a father-son bonding experience. But little did I know that this night might turn into a true horror story. The tour guide, a man in tattered clothes, ushered us into the interior. The atmosphere turned heavy with a feel of foreboding, and the creaking floorboards underneath our toes echoed with ghostly whispers. My son, Timmy, clung to my side, his eyes wide with an aggregate of pleasure and fear. As we ventured deeper into the residence, the darkness enveloped us, damaged best by flickering candlelight and eerie decorations. The guide regaled us with stories of past hauntings and unexplained phenomena. I chuckled nervously, seeking to reassure Timmy that it was all only a show. But deep down, the unease started growing inside me. About halfway via the excursion, the lighting fixtures suddenly went out, plunging us into utter darkness. Panic swelled inside me, and I frantically referred to Timmy. No reaction. My coronary heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled for my telephone, the usage of its feeble flashlight to look for my son. I stumbled through the inky blackness, bumping into different excursion goers who had been similarly disoriented. Whispers of fear and confusion filled the air.
"Timmy, where are you?"
I shouted desperately. As I endured my search, a sinister thought commenced to gnaw at me. What if this becomes all a part of the tour? What if they'd taken Timmy somewhere to scare me? But the nagging feeling that something turned seriously wrong would not leave me. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon a fellow excursion goer who whispered to me that he'd discovered an abandoned vehicle outdoors. The guide had cited in advance that the house had become so far flung that it became clean to wander off. It hit me like a sledgehammer, the possibility that my son had wandered out and gotten lost in the dark. With trembling fingers, I accompanied the strangers out to the front of the residence. There, in the dim light of the moon, I noticed it. An antique, rusted automobile, its doorways ajar. My heart sank as I found out that my worst fears were coming genuine. Timmy had to have climbed into the vehicle, and I had no concept of where it would have taken him. I called out to him once more. However, the only response was the eerie howling of the wind. Panic and dread gnawed at my insides. I had to locate him. With the assistance of a few other tour-goers, we commenced to scour the place, combing through the darkness for any signal from my son. It was a nightmare. Time appeared to blur as we scoured the woods, shouting Timmy's call and scanning the eerie shadows. The cold wind appeared to hold his call, mocking me with its vacancy. Then, sooner or later, a voice, a distant, faint cry that appeared to be like my son's. My heart leaped, and I accompanied the sound. Deeper into the woods, the cries grew louder, and I ran with all the energy I had left. There, hidden in the back of a gnarled tree, I discovered Timmy, his tear-streaked face illuminated by way of my flashlight. I scooped him up in my palms, hugging him tightly, remedy flooding through me. He was scared, disoriented, but unharmed. As we made our way back to the haunted house, Timmy informed me that a stranger had lured him into the car with the promise of candy. The kidnapper had drove a short distance, then left behind the car, leaving Timmy alone within the darkness. My heart filled with rage and gratitude that we might find him unhurt. The police conducted an investigation of the matter. However, the kidnapper remained at large. That Halloween night, I had experienced a real horror story. It came as a reminder that on occasion, the most terrifying reviews manifest while you least expect them. As we left the haunted residence behind, I held Timmy close and we made our way home, the memory of that night forever etched in our minds. Halloween would never be the same for us. However, we have become grateful to understand that actual horror can become something that can be faced and conquered together. Halloween night, my friends and I decided to do something daring, something we would later wish we hadn't. We'd heard whispers about an old, spooky residence on the edge of town. Legend has it that a mysterious clown lived there, and he gave out sweets that could make your wildest desires come true. We figured it had become just a Halloween tradition, but the appeal of free sweets was too good to pass up. There was 5 of us, and our costumes ranged from pirates to zombies. We walked down the dark, winding street that led to the ominous house. The wind rustled the leaves, and an eerie feeling washed over us as we approached. The residence stood within the shadow of the moon, its window shatters and ivy creeping up the walls like sinister arms. We could barely make out the diminished welcome mat. However, we decided to step inside. The air was heavy with the smell of dampness and decay, and I felt a shiver run down my backbone. As we ventured deeper into the residence, our flashlights pierced the darkness, revealing the unsettling remnants of a forgotten life. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and dust lined the furniture like a sinister shroud. It was a haunted house directly out of a horror film. We eventually reached the living room, and there it turned into a desk overflowing with sweets. It became a sweet lover's paradise. We had been giddy with exhilaration, grabbing handfuls of sweets, absolutely oblivious to the looming horror that awaited us. That's when we heard it, a faint, eerie laughter that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. It sent chills down our spines. I attempted to brush it off as a prank, however, my pals were less satisfied. Our heartbeats quickened and our laughter turned to fearful whispers. We were ready to bolt out of there when the room grew darker, the flashlight beams flickering and sputtering. Panic set in when we realized we had been surrounded by shadows. The sinister laughter grew louder, echoing through the residence. We desperately looked for a way out, but the darkness appeared to close in around us. And then, out of the shadows, he emerged, the mysterious clown, an ugly parent with a painted smile that was completely etched onto his face. His eyes were pools of darkness. He held a sinister-looking balloon in one hand and outstretched his hand with the other. He changed into a nightmare.
Who needs sweets?
He sneered, his voice dripping with malice. We had been frozen in terror, unable to move. It was as though the room itself had conspired to keep us captive. One of my buddies, Jake, was determined to make a run for it. He darted toward the door, but the clown moved impossibly fast, grabbing Jake's arm with a vice-like grip. Jake screamed, and we rushed to his aid, desperately trying to pry him from the clown's crutches. But it became like fighting with a shadow. The clown's grip tightened, and Jake's cries for assistance grew extra desperate. In a last-ditch effort, we managed to rip Jake from the clown's grip, but it cost us dearly. The clown's sinister balloon popped, freeing a gas that stuffed the room. We struggled to breathe, our vision blurring, and our limbs growing heavy. As we gasped for air, we watched in horror as the clown converted. His painted smile contorted into an ugly grin, revealing rows of sharp, yellow enamel. He lunged at us, his lengthy, bony hands going for our throats. We fought again with all the strength we could muster, but it became like fighting a nightmare that refused to quit. In our weakened state, we managed to push the clown back, and he retreated into the shadows, disappearing into the darkness. We stumbled out of the house, grasping for air and choking on the fumes. Halloween night had become a real nightmare, and we knew we had narrowly escaped something unspeakable. We never discovered what that clown wanted or why he had chosen to terrorize us. All we knew was that the candy turned out to be tainted, and the house held a darkness we could by no means fully understand. Halloween had converted from a night of laughter into a night of authentic horror, and the reminiscence of that sinister clown might haunt our dreams for years to come. We swore in no way to go back to that haunted residence, and that mysterious clown remained a chilling reminder of the darkness that would lurk in the back of even the most harmless of Halloween traditions. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, and a few homes are better left abandoned.